Hello everyone and welcome to our fractions lesson this week. So a bit of maths, bit of fractions. You have done fractions before, but I think probably in primary 3 we have spoken about some fractions in primary 4 but not really officially. So some of it might be new learning, some of it might just be revision, so hopefully it all makes sense today. So I am learning about fractions. So our first success criteria, I can identify halves and quarters, and I can use these two symbols correctly. We'll have a look at what those are in a wee second. Next, learn intention. I am beginning to recognise other fractions, and then I've put these three other symbols in which we will look at during the lesson. So the first thing to probably think about is, what is a fraction? Because some people hear that word and they start to panic a little bit. They start to think it's a bit too tricky. So we're going to have a first wee look at what is a fraction. So here we have our first fraction, which has got 1, then a line, and then the number 2 at the bottom. So this particular fraction we would call a half. Okay, we'll come back to that in a wee second though. Let's look at the actual parts of the fraction first. So there's some fancy words coming up, but don't worry if you don't remember them. It's just to know what the different parts of a fraction are called. So the top number on a fraction is called the numerator. The bottom number on a fraction is called the denominator. The denominator, okay. So what that means is, if you had a nice bit of cake, and you cut that cake into 2 pieces, and you were going to be given half of a piece, because that's what this fraction is, it would mean that you would get 1 part of the cake if it was cut into 2 parts. So you cut the cake into 2 parts, because that's the number on the bottom, and then you would get 1 of those parts. That's the number on the top. Okay. Don't worry if that's not making a lot of sense right now. We'll come back to it, and hopefully throughout the lesson we'll be able to work out why that is how it is. So let's have a wee look at halves first. So at the top here we've got different words that we might be coming across: half, halving and halves. So we're going to have a look at those. So imagine we've got a shape, a nice square here, and we cut the square into 2 equal sections. So I've drawn a line down the middle and I've sort of shaded in one of them. So I've got 2 equal sections there. This shaded section is called a half, and this non-shaded section is also called a half. And we write that as a fraction. So this number that I've put in the red circle, that is the fraction, and we would say a half. So if we see this symbol, the 1 and then the line and the 2, we call it a half. So that means the square, or the shape, has been cut into 2 sections, and each section we call a half. The 2 halves make one whole thing. So if we add a half and a half together, we get one whole shape. So in this example, we add a half and we get the square back together. So 2 halves make one whole thing, one whole shape. So let's have a look at another shape, because sometimes it's not always squares that we're cutting in half. Let's have a look at a triangle. So if I cut the triangle into 2 equal sections, I've got a half on this side and I've got a half on this side. So again, 2 halves make a whole, and they're 2 equal sizes. Let's have a look at a circle now. So going back to that cake example that we had at the start. So imagine you've got a nice big circle cake, maybe it's been your birthday. We've cut it into 2 pieces. Each piece would be called a half if they were the same size. So I've got a half over here and I've got a half down here as well. So they are both a half. The 2 halves must be the same size. If they are not the same size, it is not a half. You've just cut it into 2 random pieces. So they need to be identical. They need to be the same size. Okay. So let's have a wee go and see if we can identify, if we can have a look at some pictures and say whether it's cut into halves or not. So I have put 6 shapes up there. You can pause the video just now and have a wee think. Is it cut into 2 pieces? And are those 2 pieces the exact same size? And if you think yep, then that shape is cut into half. So you can pause the video just now and have we go at these shapes. Okay, so hopefully you've had a wee chance to have a look and see if these shapes are cut into halves. 2 pieces that are both the same size. So let's have a look at the answers. So number 1, yep, it is cut into halves. Both of those shapes are the same size and it's just cut into 2 pieces. Same with number 2, that is also a half. Number 3, although it is cut into 2 pieces, it's not a half because they are not the same size. You see how that top section is really, really small and then the bottom section is huge? Not the same size, so it's not a half. Number 4, not cut into halves because it's actually cut into 3 sections. So remember, a half is cut into 2 sections. So not number 4 is not halves. Number 5, again, not cut into halves, it's cut into 3 sections and they're not the same size, so it's not at all halves. And number 6, yep, it is cut into 2 sections, but the 2 sections are not equal, so it's not halves. So the only ones that were halves were number 1 and number 2. 2 equal sections that are the same size. So well done if you got those ones correct. We're now going to move on to quarters. So quarters is another new word that we might have heard before, and we're going to be looking at that today. So some words that we might hear: quarter, quartering, quarters. So what does this mean? So here's the next symbol that I've put up in the red circle. There's a 1 and then a line and then a 4. So we say that as a quarter, 1 quarter. So if you see this symbol, you can say 1 quarter. Okay, what does it mean? If we have a shape and we cut it into 4 sections this time, that number on the bottom, that denominator tells us how many sections to cut it into. So because there's a 4 on the bottom, we cut the shape into 4 pieces, or quarters. So here's a square. I have cut it into 4 equal pieces, so we could call each of those pieces a quarter. So we've got 4 quarters there. So 4 quarters will make 1 whole. A quarter and a quarter and a quarter and a quarter will make up that 1 whole shape, that 1 whole square that we've got in this example. And like we had in the half section, all the quarters have got to be the exact same size. Otherwise, it's not actually a quarter, you've just cut the shape up into random pieces. So they've got to be equal, and we've got to have 4 of them for this example. So here's an example not of a square this time, it's of a circle. So you can see I've still cut the circle into 4 pieces. Each of the pieces are the same, so we have a quarter. So we've got quarter, a quarter, a quarter, and a quarter. We've got 4 quarters there, and it makes 1 whole circle. And again, here's a nice big rectangle that I've put in, and I have cut it up into 4 equal pieces, or I've tried to, my drawing's not that good. So each section would be called a quarter, and we could write that as that symbol, that 1 and then the line and the 4, 1 quarter. So here's our challenge. We're whizzing through this today, so I've put out 6 activities for us to have a look at. Are they quarters? So remember, a quarter is something that's cut up into 4 sections, but the sections have to be the exact same size as each other. Okay, so pause the video just now, have a look at these 6 examples and decide, is it a quarter, is it not a quarter, and why. Pause the video just now. Alright, let's have a look and see how we did on our quarters activity. So the first one, it is cut into 4 sections, but the 4 sections are not equal, so they are not cut into quarters. So that one was nope. Question 2, yep, that is quarters. They're cut into 4 equal sections, although my drawing is not perfect, so apologies for that, but it is 4 equal sections, so we are calling it a quarter. Number 3, cut up into 4 sections, but the sections are not the same size, so it's not quarters. Number 4, yep, we have got quarters there, so that should have been a yes. Same with number 5, we've got 4 equal sections there. Number 6, not quarters, it's cut into, don't know how many sections, 7 sections I think there, so not quarters at all. So hopefully you got those ones correct. So hopefully by now, let's just have a quick recap. Hopefully by now we're understanding what a half is. So that is when a shape or something is split into 2 equal smaller shapes. So for example, a cake, a packet of crisps, you can split that up into a half. A pizza, we always do food because I always get a wee bit excited when we cut things up, but you can obviously half paper. So if I was going to give, paper out into the class, I might want to half the paper so that, I can give half to one person and half to another person. So a half is when something is split into 2 equal smaller shapes. And there's some examples there, so circles, squares, rectangles, as long as they're the same size on both halves. And a quarter is when a shape is split into 4 equal smaller sections. And again, it can be food, of course, but it can be anything. Paper, it can even be like pencils, rubbers, anything that can be split up. You can make it into halves, you can make it into quarters, but teachers do like to use food examples because we get excited about lunchtimes and things like that, and I know you guys do too. So that is a half and a quarter. We've had a wee look at those. Our last success criteria was to think about looking ahead to other types of fractions. So this is kind of going on to a hot level for today. So if you think you've had enough, absolutely fine, you can stop the video just now, or you can listen to this next bit and decide, yeah, I want to take my learning to the next level, let's keep going. So, in the success criteria I had these three symbols. So we've got 1 and then a line and 3, 1 and then a line and 5, and 1 and then a line and 10. So these are also fractions that we might come across, and it's maybe important that we know what they're called, so let's have a look at what they're called. So this first one is called thirds. So it is when we cut something into 3 equal sections. Remember that denominator, that number on the bottom, tells us how many bits or how many pieces we're cutting something into. So the number on the bottom, 3, tells us that we're going to cut something into 3 equal parts. So we call this fraction third. So if you see this fraction, you can say 1/3 or a third. The second one there is a fifth. So how many parts do you think we're cutting something into this time? Hopefully you said 5, because it is 5. That number on the bottom tells us 5. The denominator tells us 5. Last one there, we've got 1 and then a line and then a number 10. It is called tenths. How many parts do you think we're cutting something into if we're cutting it into tenths? Hopefully you said 10, because then we're on the right lines for today. So we've got thirds, fifths and tenths. They are other fractions. Now we can get loads of other fractions. We could be here all day talking about all the different types of fractions that we can make. We can cut things into loads of tiny small pieces, but we're not going to go into that today. But you can have a chat with mum and dad at home, and you can maybe come up with a list of other fractions, see if you can work out what they're called. That's absolutely fine. So let's have a quick wee look at thirds. So there is a wee rectangle, and I've cut it into 3 equal parts because it's told me to cut it into 3 parts because that's the number on the bottom. Fifths, really sorry about the drawing, guys. It is cut into 5 parts. They're maybe not equal, but just imagine that they are in 5 equal parts. And tenths, I have cut that rectangle into 10 equal parts because it's told me to, because it's the number on the bottom. So there we go. So if you would like a little extra challenge for today, because you're all superstars, so I know you will, I've got 8 questions here for us to try. And it says, look at each shape and decide if it's cut into halves, quarters, thirds, fifths or tenths. So you can pause the video just now and have a wee look at each shape and just write next to each one, or write it on a wee post-it note or something about what you think each of these shapes are. And again, apologies for the drawing, hopefully you can work it out. So let's have a wee look at the answers. So hopefully you managed this, guys, and hopefully you're starting to use that language like quarters, halves, thirds, fifths, tenths. That would be fantastic. So let's have a wee look. So number 1, it was quarters. They're cut into 4 equal parts, so remember that's quarters. Number 2, fifths, or 1/5. Each bit is 1/5. Number 3, again quarters, because it is cut into 4. Number 4 is halves. Number 5 is tenths. Number 6 is halves. Number 7 is thirds. And number 8 is also thirds. So hopefully you have managed that today. Well done, everybody. So if you would like to extend your knowledge and take it up a level, take it to the next level, I have uploaded some activities on SeeSaw for you to try, all to do with fractions and identifying fractions and naming fractions. So hopefully that will just challenge you that little bit more. Let me know if you're struggling with any of this, or it doesn't make sense, or speak to mum and dad and see if they can give you any help. But I am always available to go over things. I don't mind messaging people and helping them out. Alright, have fun. Bye.